Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub, and if you mention BDS to Jews who know that the letters refer to the insidious attempt to undermine and really destroy the state of Israel through economic and cultural boycotts, economic divestment, and economic and cultural sanctions against Israel. The boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against the state of Israel. If you mention BDS to Jews familiar with the term, the image will be the American college campus and Western European efforts in opposition to Jewish life on the east side of the Green Line on what's commonly referred to as the West Bank. The image we have of BDS is that it is an anti-Zionist assault on the state of Israel from outside Israel, from here in the United States or in other foreign countries. But what we don't often imagine is a similar anti-Zionist assault on Israel from within the Jewish state, on the Israeli college campus. And there's something bizarre in the reality of an anti-Zionist movement within the state of Israel. But sadly, that is part of the reality of Israel today. Well, one pro-Zionist organization is becoming a leading voice in defense of Zionism in Israel and a response to the anti-Zionism on Israeli college campuses. It's called Im Tirtzu, which is normally translated in English as "if you will it." Many of you probably know that the iconic statement penned by the formal founder of Zionism, Theodor Herzl, who wrote about his quixotic dream of creating a Jewish state with the words, Im Tirtzu ein zo agada, which is typically translated, "If you will it, it is no dream," a phrase that has become the symbolic statement of the commitment to the Zionist dream of recreating the Jewish homeland and a Jewish sovereign state. And so this pro-Israel organization in Israel, founded in 2006, named itself Im Tirtzu, which refers not only to the transcending Jewish quest to recreate a state of Israel, but to the ongoing dream having to do with the integrity of Zionism and the integrity of the state of Israel, and a sense that it should be embraced by Israelis on college campuses and throughout Israeli society. And on this edition of L'Chaim, what a pleasure I have to introduce you to two individuals at the heart of Im Tirtzu in Israel. Douglas Altabef is the chairman of the board of Im Tirtzu. Doug is originally from New York. He attended Columbia College, then went to Harvard Law School, and in 2009, Doug and his family made aliyah, where he now devotes his time and energy to Im Tirtzu and other Israeli NGOs. And I'm also most pleased to be joined by the current CEO of Im Tirtzu, Matan Peleg, a graduate of Haifa University with an MA in conflict resolution from Hebrew University. Matan served in the IDF's Armored Corps with honors. He continues to do so in the reserves. And he is the author of Between Rishikesh and the Temple, which describes the resilience of Israel and Zionism. It is an honor to welcome both of you to L'Chaim on this table. Thank you for joining me so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
It is a pleasure. I want to begin with you only because you represent a portion of the American Jewish audience watching right now. Doug, you went to Columbia, then you went to Harvard, then you were a lawyer, and then at some point, you and your family. How many in your family?
Well, it's a yours, mine, and ours family.
Very nice.
So the ours came with us to Israel. The yours and mine stayed in the States.
How many are in the yours?
There was two that I started with. My wife brought one to the table, and then we had one together.
Okay. And that one made Aliyah with you?
Yes, she did. Aliza Ivri.
Aliza. And your wife's name?
Is Linda.
Linda. So Linda, Aliza, and you make Aliyah 2009?
Yes.
Okay. Why?
Why? We had a wonderful life in New York. So it wasn't that we were being pushed in any way. We were being pulled in a very profound way. So we traded the good life for the meaningful life. And my wife had never been to Israel until 2002, when during the Intifada she said, no one's going. We really need to go. We need to show up.
What was her Jewish commitment at the time?
Together, when we came together, we developed more and more of a tie to Judaism together. But neither of us grew up in particularly Zionistic households.
Okay.
And so this is all self-generated.
Okay.
And when we went in 2002, she was smitten. She was absolutely blown away. She could not believe it.
Oh, do you remember what it was about Israel that blew her away?
Well, the first thing that blew her away was people were warning us, how can you go? It's a war zone. You're bringing a 3-year-old at the time. And it's so dangerous. And within 10 minutes of our being, literally 10 minutes, we both felt a profound sense of embarrassment for us forever wondering about it, and for our friends for counseling us not to go. But what blew her away was the idea that you were living in a Jewish world. You were living in a place where the clerk in the supermarket would say Shabbat Shalom to you on Friday afternoon, where you were living by Jewish time. It didn't matter whether you were religious or not. You were living in a gestalt that was completely Jewish. So that was one thing that was astounding to her. The other thing was, of course, connecting that which one had read about in history, in the Bible, with reality of places that continued to hold the same names, had the same heritage. It was astounding. But the one thing that really struck us was to go to places. We had a guide, and one of the first places he took us to was Gilo, in the south part of Jerusalem, which had recently had a terror attack. We had seen pictures on TV, and then we saw it. And we saw the intimacy of life. We saw how close everything was.
It's a stone's throw.
It was a stone's throw. And that sense that the reality was so different from the distilled reality of media was very, very surprising. But we had a very smart guide, and he took us to places. He basically took us to visit his family because we had a 3-year-old and he had his grandchildren. And so we had our little one in a gun.
What's his name?
Zev Natan.
Okay, Zev Natan.
And it was magical. I mean, at one point, and I think this is interesting, we were in Jerusalem, and I turned to my wife and I said, you know what today is? And she said, I think it's Wednesday. I said, yes, it is Wednesday, but it's also Christmas Day. So she said, who would have known? Would have never figured it out.
Okay, Linda was blown away.
Yes.
This was not your first trip to Israel.
No, it wasn't my first trip.
Was there something about that trip that also touched you? It's one thing, by the way, to visit Israel and to be moved by Israel.
Yes.
And to understand that the way most American Jews perceive Israel as a whole, and specifically the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, has nothing to do with what we see on American television.
Correct.
That, however, is different than a family saying, we're uprooting everything we have and we're moving from what you call the good life
Yes.
to the meaningful life.
Yes.
A very interesting way of describing it. But something had to move the two of
Sure.
you to make that degree of commitment.
Well, we didn't decide then and there to do
I
that.
understand it took a process.
It was a process, and it was a very smart, meaning a very gradual, osmotic type of process, in the sense that we did leave, and my wife said, "That's it. This is the only place I want to come to on vacation."
Onto vacation.
Right.
Okay.
So vacations became
I'm
longer and
pushing
longer.
you. At some point, either you or Linda said to the other, "Let's go."
Right.
Who said it to whom and why?
Well, we fell in love with a small town in the north of Israel, a little town called Rosh Pinah. And we used to go there during the summers. And one summer, the summer of 2007, we saw a for sale sign on the fence of one of the old historic houses. And basically, we bought the house on the spot. So I turned to Linda and I said, I think the decision as to where we plant our flag in this country has just been made for us. But that doesn't mean we go. What prompted us to go was the realization that we had at the time an 8-year-old girl, and we said, you know, if we strike while the iron's hot, while the window is open, so to speak, we could turn our little Eliza could become an Israeli kid. But the window will not stay open indefinitely. So we looked hard at each other and we said, yeah, let's do it. Let's
Okay.
do it.
Was it the right decision for you?
Oh, absolutely.
Because?
Because, well, we've never questioned the decision. We've never had buyer's remorse. We've never said, you know, it was a noble idea, but, you know, what were we thinking? And we've made it work. We've made it work. And in part, we've made it work because I've found the opportunity to throw my energies into an organization like Im Tirtzu, which is, to me, defines, you know, doing something very meaningful with one's life.
All right, one last question in this area. You said that neither of you were brought up in a Zionist home.
Right.
And it sounds like Linda had more of a Jewish home.
No, I had more of a Jewish.
You had more. Okay.
No. When I say a Zionist home, I mean there were no pictures of Jabotinsky on the wall. There were no, you know, verses
What an
from
interesting
Herzl.
person to choose.
Yeah, well,
You
yeah.
didn't say Ben Gurion.
Right.
Jabotinsky.
Right.
Does that, by the way, indicate sympathy in one direction or another?
No,
from
we have
you?
great respect for both, but Jabotinsky speaks, I think, very strongly to a great many Israelis, particularly on the right, particularly when we are trying to figure out how we stand strong in a very difficult
And
manner.
so that define you would self-define as someone on the right.
Yes, I would.
Was that true when you were in America?
Absolutely not. No, that's
Absolutely
not.
You were a liberal in America?
You probably started that way, and as I said to someone last night, you know, in the Bronx where I was born, the definition of a conservative is a liberal who's been mugged, right? So I was mugged by reality. I went to Columbia in the late 60s, and I saw what political madness looks like close up.
You went in the SDS days.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So that my experience in college was to pull back from that, was to say this.
Because that was too extreme.
Yes.
Yes. But you now would self-identify on the right.
Yes.
Okay. You remember the show You Bet Your Life with
Yes.
Groucho
Marx.
And then he would say, well, now it's time to win some money.
Right. Say the
So-
secret word
yes.
and you win $100.
So I could talk to you all day, but I want to talk to
Yes.
Matan.
Right.
Okay. Did you know all that story?
Not all the details, but
It's
I
interesting,
heard.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. So who the heck are you? And I know your educational path, and you served in the Armored Corps.
Still.
And you still do. In fact, you told me when you go back to Israel, what?
Yeah, so when I will go back to Israel, a week after, I'm going to the reserve. My wife, it will be a little bit hard for her, but this is life.
I understand. Children?
3.
What do you have?
A boy, 7 years old, a girl, 5, and one that is 4 months,
Very
4
lovely.
months old.
Boy.
A boy.
A boy. you know, in America, we ask the question, were you a secular Jew, or what synagogue did you belong to, what movement are you? It's a different kind of question for an Israeli.
Yeah.
But did you grow up in a house a family that you would describe as either actively Zionist or actively observant?
Actively Zionist, very Zionist, it's a family that has a lot of a strong conscience of Jewish mission, historically mission in Israel. This is the place for our self-determination. It was a more secular house, but with a Jewish conscience, meaning we're mentioning Shabbat, but we don't keep it like 100%. Go to shul mainly in holidays, in Chagim, not every Shabbat, but this is, well, almost the majority in Israel.
What's your wife's name?
Adrit.
Adrit. So did Adrit light Friday night candles or no?
Yes.
Okay. A kiddush or no?
Yes, kiddush.
Challah or no? Sort of yes.
Sort of yes. Sort of yes.
So you understand from an American perspective, you're an observant Jew.
Okay.
Okay. I understand. And when you finish high school, you go into the IDF.
Amen.
Okay. And you were there for how many years?
3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were in the tank corps?
Yeah.
Okay. You see action?
Yes. I started my duty in 99. So I did the last action in Lebanon, and then all the redraw out of it. And then at the end of my service in 2002, our unit was very involved in a defensive shield operation that was about fight the terror that was, it was a nightmare in Israel in 2002. And we talked about it today, that this was, for me, it was very important. I'm not a militant guy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like army. I'm doing it because it's important and I understand the need. And in 2002, because of the riots, because of the terror attacks that were on a daily basis, and thousands of Israelis died in this period of time, I was very proud to do something about it. And it was in the end of my 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So this was, and today we are in the reserves. Once a year, I'm going to 1 month. And again, I'm very proud of it.
It's also a big commitment. Permit me for asking, were you ever wounded?
No.
So you were lucky.
Yeah.
Good for you. I'm very happy for you. When you say to me, you're not, the army and militancy is not who you are.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, you recognize that Israel needs Tzahal,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very much.
In your 3 years, and I'm asking this question because this is the kind of question we in America hear all the time. In your 3 years, what did you feel the ethic, the morality of the IDF was? Did you see things that saddened you? Did you see things that made you proud? I want you to answer both those questions.
I learned in the army that wars, it's a very negative thing. Only in Hollywood movies you can see war like it's a romantic stuff between two friends and fight together. In the end of the day, war is not good. Violence is not good. And so of course that when you fight, you see things that are make you sad. From the other side, there is not any alternative. I think that I'm very proud of the IDF soldiers. I see how we fight. I see now I understand even more the instructions and orders that we got when we were young. I'm today 36 years old. I was in the army 18, 19, 20. And the instructions were always about don't shoot just because you're not sure. Shoot only when it's a sure one. And it's in the IDF soldiers, they don't fight automatically. It's always back. So it's only when you have to do it, and you need to be accurate. A lot of times, in a lot of operations, in a lot of actions, we risk ourselves, and just to not make others, people that are theoretically not involved, wounded. And it's very hard because your enemy is actually use human shield, and it's on a daily basis, on a daily operation. It's not just something to say. You see it in your eyes, so it's very complicated. So I'm very proud that the Jewish army, the Israeli army, that is also, of course, with the other minorities who lives in Israel, this army is invest a lot in all the moral idea.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever serve on the West Bank?
Yes, I did.
Did you ever serve at a checkpoint?
Yes, I did, a little bit, because I came from the tank unit, but basically, yes.
Okay. When you served at a checkpoint,
Mm-hmm.
did you feel there were instances where Israelis, young kids, 19, 20, 21, 8, it was so frustrating that they took their frustration out on Palestinians who were waiting in line on checkpoints? Did you see that?
Well, I think on the general basis, the soldiers, although they are young, they're doing a great job. It's very hard. It's very hard. You need to understand how intense it is, and that you check people day after day, and suddenly, for example, a guy that you know, he's going in a checkpoint every day, and you become a friend of him, in a way. And you trust him. And then one time you say to you tell yourself, or your commander is telling you, you know, check his bag. And you open it and you see a big knife, or an axe, or exploding materials, then, or a weapon. And you ask yourself, oh my God, what I trust you. So again, checkpoints is like, whoa, it's a bad thing. You don't want it. The need to do it. What is the need? Unfortunately, what we are seeing is that the Palestinians, with their deep resistance to Israel, they created a lot of tragedies. Those checkpoints, no one liked them. They are there to stop the terror. And so the frustration is big. But from the other side, you need to understand that in IDF, the soldiers have a lot of conversations with the commandos. So there are some examples of negative stuff, because violence is bad. It brings only bad. But on the general spectrum, in the big picture, and even in the small picture, you see a lot of humanity, although it's very complicated, and a lot of help. Sometimes I can give you examples of people who got wounded somewhere. You don't know what is the reason, Palestinian Arabs, and they come to the checkpoint because they want to go to Israeli hospitals. They prefer that the IDF will treat them and not the Hamas or the Fatah or the PLO. The people in the Palestinians are very angry on the corruption and the violence and the persecution that they are doing to themselves. And sometimes, the majority of the times, they prefer the Israeli hands.
Do you hate Palestinians?
I don't hate Palestinians. I angry very much on the leadership of the Palestinians.
That's very different.
Yes.
I'm asking you about, do you hate the Palestinian people as a people?
That's a hard question, difficult question. I don't hate no one as a collective. But when I see, for example, the glorification of terrorist bombers, the glorification of violence, the holy resistance, what they call it in Arabic, mukawama, the resistance, is so deep in the culture, I'm angry. I'm angry on people who choose terror instead of life. I give you an example. The Jewish people were 2,000 years outside of Israel. And they never forget Jerusalem. In every wedding we give an oath, a territorial oath, not to forget Jerusalem. We never forgot Jerusalem. But for the meantime, the Jews chose education, they choose life. When you go to Palestinian towns, villages, and you talk with the people, you ask them, from where are you? He will tell you from Akko, from Haifa, and those are young people. So they keep this false narrative. 70 years after the independence war, they are still don't choose life. And you see it in the corruption. Millions of dollars came from European governments and the United States to the Palestinians, to the PLO. And they don't invest in education. They invest in terror. The money just going away on corruption. And I'm angry on it.
There is a difference between anger and hatred. I didn't ask you if you were angry. I understand the anger. I ask Israelis your age all the time, do you hate Palestinians? Almost to a 1, they look at me like I'm crazy.
Yeah, I can.
It's not, we don't hate, and they will say what you say, but I think I can understand. I remember this very vividly when a young person, roughly your age, I asked him if he hated Palestinians. He said, I only hate the Palestinians who killed my brother. They I hate. But Palestinians? No. And there are many Israelis who know individual Palestinians. And it isn't about whether in the end they're going to be brothers. But they don't hate each other. And it's profound the way you speak about the horror of war. And I agree with you 1,000%. Americans who have grown up, lucky us, never knowing war. There was no war on American soil. My generation is post-World War II. While there are Americans who've served in Vietnam, in Iraq, and they are around the world today, most of us have never experienced the horror of battle, the fear of battle, the sound of battle, the smell of battle. We don't have a clue. And movies are all one big lie. So I am very much touched by the way you describe the horror of war, the evil of war, and you don't want war. At the same time, that's different than saying you hate anybody. And you go into the reserves once a year, not because you want to, and not because you're out to get anybody. It is to defend your wife, your children, and your homeland from, unfortunately, a piece of the Palestinian people that is your enemy. And they don't want you there. They don't want a Jewish state there. And if they had their way, there would be no Israel at all. Am I correct?
You are. I think that, look, the Jewish people came to Israel. They made Shivat Zion. But all the settlements, even before the creation of Israel, people didn't want to live in the Arab villages. We tried always, historically, try to find places for ourselves. The violence and the resistance, if you look at it in a timeline, the Haganah, all the Alexander Zaid, all the people who were the defenders of the Yeshuv, they did it because of Arab riots. So this violence made us need to defend ourselves. In 47, it is a good example about we wanted just like to live in Israel, to live in our homeland. And the violence brought this tragedy. When I see what is going on today in Judea and Samaria, if this is what you're going to, again, I think the majority in Israel, they don't want to be in area A and area B, if you take the Oslo idea. But most of the people are very realistic. They know that Israel deserves and needs a defensible borders. So all the what you call Area C, all the mountains in Judea and Samaria, you have to have it. And I'm not talking only about, you see, I'm not talking about historical reasons, even just for security. Let's not forget, Israel is very small. I learned in the size of New Jersey. And the Middle East is so big, 47 Muslim countries in the area. Look, this is all what we have. I think if someone has a problem, he can go to his neighbors. They speak the same languages, the same culture. This is what we have, and we will defend it.
If tomorrow you knew for a fact that the Palestinians did not want war with you anymore and were willing to live with you side by side in peace, honest peace, like Canada lives with America.
Mm-hmm.
If you knew that for a fact, would you be prepared to make territorial concessions and to give up some of the West Bank? Let's say you kept the Etzion block, you kept a lot of what is Area C, but you kept Ma'ale Adumim, and you kept Efrat, and you even kept Modi'in, and maybe you kept even Ariel, but that for, around Hebron and around all of the major, Ramallah, Nablus, it was not going to be Israel. There was going to be a Palestinian sovereign entity. Would you accept it?
Well, by fact, we are not in Ramallah.
Would you
and
accept
Nablus.
it?
Not everything, because, for example, Hebron, I think we have all the right to have the way to.
You can visit.
No. The part in Hebron that
You
the
will
Jewish
not give up sovereignty over Hebron.
Not in Hebron, especially not in the corridor to the
Cave of Machpelah.
Cave of Machpelah, and Jerusalem needs to continue to be united. The Temple Mount needs to be under Jewish sovereignty, because historically, let's not forget, under Jewish sovereignty, it provides more freedom also for all the religions. So this, of course. Other areas, A and B, I think the majority of people in Israel will want to take the risk. But let's not forget, when we did the disengagement in 2005 from Gaza, we saw what was the result of it.
By the way, nobody believes it'll happen or it's possible. I asked you a theoretical question. Mm-hmm. If. I don't believe that if is happening in my lifetime, your lifetime, or my children's lifetime. I believe, unfortunately, they would take a sea change in attitude in the Palestinian leadership and in the Muslim leadership. But it's an important question to ask both of you, because it places you in the Jewish world. And there's one thing to say: unless and until the Palestinian is prepared to live with Israel in absolute peace, I'm not giving up any territory. It's another thing to say, I don't care if the Palestinian promises, I don't care if the Messiah comes, and the Palestinian has no claim on Israel at all. I'm not giving up a square inch of Eretz Yisrael. That's a different attitude. And I wanted our audience to know, where did you stand? And I'm asking you now, Doug, the same question. You self-identify on the right. And you've heard, Matan is eloquent, and you're eloquent. So I'm asking you, again, to help place yourself for our audience. Right. If tomorrow, don't tell me it's not going to happen. No, I know it's not going to happen. But the question is, theoretically, if there were a Palestinian entity that said to you, let's share the land in peace, you willing to share the land?
Yes. I'll tell you why. First of all,
is that a yes?
Yes. With lots of caveats. Eretz Yisrael is much bigger than that which goes to the Jordan River. If you look at the Bible, Eretz Yisrael goes into Mesopotamia, goes to the Euphrates. We don't have it, and we have no designs upon it. I think it's very important to remind ourselves of what Zionism is. Zionism is a nationalist movement, but unlike the nationalist movements that Europeans are familiar with, we have no territorial designs on other people. We have designs on ourselves. It is a movement for national self-determination of the Jewish people. If we've signed peace agreements with Egypt in which we were willing to give back the Sinai Peninsula. We've signed a peace agreement with Jordan where we give them lots of water from the Kinneret. We do a lot of things, much of which we don't even know, we can't even talk about, to help the regime in Jordan. If the planets lined up, and the if that you're asking is an enormous if, because as the Prime Minister of Israel says,
doesn't matter.
It's a Jewish
it's a
state.
theoretical
Right.
if.
Okay, so I am not one who says no. Every square inch of Judea and Shomron has to stay with us forever, because I'm not someone who says we have to drive these people out of our midst. We have to figure out a way to live with them. If the circumstances were such that the best way to live with them was for them to have sovereignty or limited sovereignty over some portion of the place that they live in, alavai, sei gesund. But that's a big if. And as you said, as Matan said, it's not something that's even remotely on the radar screen.
That's correct.
No, it really isn't. And so let's look at the world that we live in.
We'll get to that in a minute. Okay. So now I want to ask the two of you. You heard my intro. Did I describe Im Tirtzu accurately enough? Do you want to add anything to what I've described? And if I got it pretty much correct, the obvious question, and you can decide which one of you wants to take this one, how in the world is this a problem for Israelis?
Right.
Why is there an Im Tirtzu needed in the state of Israel?
Right.
What's driving anyone who is an Israeli to have to learn to be a Zionist? Do you have friends, Matan?
Yeah.
And they don't understand that what Israel is for and why you're there and the connection not only to Jews today, but to Jews for centuries? Explain to me why Im Tirtzu is needed inside Israel.
Great question. By the way, it's not only about friends. Let's not forget, Im Tirtzu is the biggest and the largest Zionist movement in Israel.
How many people? How large organization?
On a yearly basis, the average is 6,000 students that are actively in our movement. A huge Facebook page, more than 200,000, lots of programs. So we are very involved. So we have thousands of people in a lot of variety of programs. By the way, also minorities who want to integrate and join the IDF. We have a lot of programs with them. So I'm talking with a lot of people. And what about the need? The problem in Israel is that there is a very strong propaganda that unfortunately this propaganda is fueled with foreign governmental money and the New Israel Fund that is based here in the United States, who give money to small but very loud organizations who promote propaganda against Israel.
For example, what's the propaganda?
I can give you lots of examples. There are organizations who, for example, blame Israel for doing ethnic cleansing to Bedouins in the Negev. Others say that we are doing war crimes in Gaza, apartheid in Judea and Samaria, occupy the Golan, a Jewish state is a racist state. Every part of Israel is under attack. So,
okay, by the way, if you live in America, you might believe that because you're not there to see the truth. Your friends are in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Do they think Israel is an apartheid, racist state?
No,
Do
not
they
at
think
all.
Israel is doing ethnic cleansing?
No, not at all. But the idea is
So who's this appealing to?
Yeah, but when you have from one side a system, the educational system don't don't teach the people how to justify why Israel needs to exist. So it's like obvious to everybody. The approach is it needs to be obvious. But from the other side, the propaganda against us from within is on a daily basis. Now we are Jews. We know the word vehigadeta. Everybody knows the the story about the Exodus, how we went out of Egypt. But vehigadeta is how to tell the story to your kid. והגדת לבנך. It means that you need to know the story and how to tell it to your son. Now the problem is that when no one teaches you, and the propaganda is within and internationally, that Israel doesn't have a right to exist, and no one gives you the tools to explain to yourself and later on to your kids why Israel has a right to exist, why it's not something to take for granted. If you don't have the tools, you cannot do והגדת on the Zionist mission. So this is what Im Tirtzu is doing in the seminars, in the universities. We provide the people tools. Unfortunately, because the educational system, for example, don't do it. We send people in the last class, in the 12th class, to see a German, a Polish concentration camps. This is not the way. The existence of Israel is not because our enemies, is about our culture. We don't get those explanations. So we took it on ourselves.
That is so fabulous. I'm not done with you.
Okay.
I want to ask you the same question. You now live in Israel.
Yes.
And you understand, I'm saying to myself, so what Matan says is adult parents, Israeli parents, have never been educated with the information necessary to explain to their children why there may be a state of Israel. Because what Matan is also describing is a worldwide effort to delegitimize the state of Israel. And when we talk about delegitimization, what it really means is pack up, turn out the lights, and leave. There are some people who don't get it. That's what's at stake here. There are people who want us to turn off the lights and leave and hand the keys over to the indigenous rightful owners, the Palestinians. Okay. But then I say to myself, are there really Israelis who think that Israel is an apartheid state? Are there really Israelis who think that Israel is involved in ethnic cleansing when you can't walk into a hospital, you can't walk into a courthouse, you can't walk into the Supreme Court of the State of Israel, you can't walk into the Knesset, you can't walk down any street. There are Arab Israelis all over the place. If we were doing ethnic cleansing, we have failed miserably. In addition, no one knows exactly how many Palestinians are living on the West Bank, but we know it's 7 figures. We know it's going to be 1 million something. So there's no what. So I say to myself, somebody tells an Israeli that there's ethnic cleansing, any Israeli with a brain is going to laugh in their face. Why is that a problem Israel has to face?
Okay, so Mark, we're talking about Jews. We are
Israelis.
Yes, but Jewish people who are phenomenally complicated. There is a very significant percentage of Israeli society that is still pining away for pre-67 Israel. They love the idea that Israel was tenuous, was vulnerable, was dancing on the head of a pin, was somehow keeping it together against all odds. What they didn't like was that we became successful.
Israelis.
That's right.
Are upset that Israel is successful.
Yes, absolutely. And most of them...
Is he talking about your friends?
No.
Okay.
No. And I'm talking about the Ari Shavits of the world. I'm talking about the Amos Ozes of the world and the David Grossmans. Very intelligent people on the left, cultural figures, who see that somehow the purity, the pristineness of Israel was destroyed by its own success. We were forced to become nasty, Goliath-like figures instead of David-like figures. But this to me is perverse. This to me is not the way I would want to live my life. I would want my neighbors to live their lives. I don't pine away. To me, it is a variation of Galut type of thinking. All right? And so, yes, there is that. And much of it resides on campuses. We were in Washington yesterday. We were with a congressman, and he said, wait a minute. I don't know a lot about Israel. Are you telling me that there are people in Israel who support BDS, just as you started the show with. And when we said yes, he just hung his head. He said, it's like, who could believe such stuff? But we're very complicated. And I think this idea that Jews are not supposed to be successful, Jews are not supposed to be sovereign, Jews are not supposed to be in control of their own destinies, is something that is still kicking around in a lot of people living in Israel.
Okay, there is an inner contradiction here. You're talking about older people. And even when you talk about Amos Oz or David Grossman, you're talking about an older generation.
Correct.
And then I said to Matan, as he's speaking about your friends, he says,
Right.
no. And the people on college campuses are closer to your age than Doug's. Why are Israeli kids on college campuses supporting a boycott, divestment, sanction movement against Israel? By the way, is it only on the West Bank?
No, let's clarify. When we talk about campuses, and this is a very important distinction that your viewers have to know, Israeli campuses differ profoundly from American campuses. Israeli students are older than American students. Israeli students have been in the army, much the same way Matan served in the army before he went to Haifa University. Israeli students, many of them are married already. Israeli students are not the ones ringing the bell for BDS. Israeli faculty is ringing the bell for BDS. It is not the student body.
It's
The
interesting.
student body is very much the way Matan describes himself and his friends. It is actually, think about it, these are kids who grew up with Israel already being a successful state, a going concern. They didn't see a transition. They've already seen Israel succeed. But what they also grew up with was the Second Intifada, 3 Gaza conflicts, stabbing Intifada in Jerusalem. They've seen ongoing conflict, and they've seen a never-ending stream of antagonism coming from the Palestinian side. The idea of victimization, that the poor Palestinians, which is something that is what the Amos Oz's believe, is completely, that's like from Mars for them. That doesn't compute at all. So no, the Israeli student body is not advocating BDS, but they are being browbeaten in many cases by tenured professors who do believe that.
So it's academia in
Yes.
Israel more than the student body.
Correct. Very much so.
Yes, and also, sorry for interrupt, what you said, he talked about older people. No, the answer is that he talks about the elite in Israel. One of our biggest criticisms in this issue is we're talking about elite in Israel that in a way became post-Zionist. So it's not
Okay, can you tell me how, this is a very upsetting, it's a very upsetting element of Israeli academic life. I'm in no way minimizing it. But I do want a sense from you the extent to which you feel, while this must be addressed, Im Tirtzu is doing a fabulous job addressing it, in the larger Israeli picture, BDS is not much of a factor. Is that fair to say?
yes.
Yeah, thank God.
It is very, yes,
absolutely.
Okay.
this is the whole point.
Okay, now tell us, what are you doing on college campuses in Israel to address what you've now defined as a movement coming out of the halls of academia, the professors who have access to and can shape in some way, subtly, the thinking of Israeli, and they're not kids like we think of in America. You and I went to Columbia, we were kids. When he went to Haifa University, right? You weren't a kid already.
Mhm.
But you're still being influenced by professors that you might respect. What is Im Tirtzu? What's your strategy? What are you trying to do to help deal with this phenomenon?
Just before, again, because what you said is so important, it's a minority that thinks that Israel is doing ethnic cleansing or war crimes. The problem is that this minority is doing business. He profit from the European governmental money. And if you criticize Israel, your business is very good. So it's unbelievable.
So money is also part of this too.
Absolutely, this is a business. This is, by the way, one of the reasons that those human rights organizations, I call them conflict organizations because they benefit out of the conflict. If you are a professor and you criticize Israel very dramatically, you know that you can find a job in European universities. If you know that if your organization who will blame Israel on war crimes, you know you will get the money from the New Israel Fund or the governments. So this is the benefit out of the conflict. What we are doing about it is some important things, and maybe Doug, you will add also, because of the English issue. So we're doing a lot of tours. We take students to, first of all, we have branches, okay? We are like magnet of people who want to do something about it. So we have a lot of branches and a lot of students who come and write by their own flyers and distribute flyers and demonstrate for Israelis. They expose the phenomena that every time there is a operation in the army, you get petitions of professors who blame us in war crimes, and our students show that those professors are actually activists in those political anti-Zionist organizations.
That's a very important point. There's a strong overlap between academia and anti-Zionist NGOs in Israel. Many of the professors are either execs or advisory board members of these NGOs.
Can you tell about the seminars that we are doing?
Yes, so our approach is two-pronged. It's Oseh Tov and Sumara, do good and stay away from bad. So the doing good, we have developed what the Jerusalem Post calls the largest extracurricular academic initiative in Israel, which is our Seminars for Zionist Thought. So every week on 4 of the major campuses, we have a lecture by an A-list speaker, whether it's an academic, a media figure, a cultural figure, who will speak on a topic concerning Zionist history, current events, Zionist values, whatever. Not propaganda, it's a straightforward topic. And students are invited to attend. We average about 150 students per lecture per campus. And you do the math, it's
How
quite
many
a few
campuses
people.
are you on?
We're doing that on four of the
Which four?
largest, on Tel Aviv University, Hebrew University, Ariel University, and Ben Gurion
Excellent,
University.
excellent.
So 4 of the very major ones.
And by the way, on this issue of those seminars, people ask, is there a need for something like this? And I always say, on this project, we don't need to prove that the need, because you see how much students come,
Exactly.
and it shows it. We don't pay scholarships to people
The
to come.
students who they prove it.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
So you're doing these kind of seminars on
Right.
on Israel's 4 major campuses.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yes.
And tours and a lot of other seminars.
So
all
here's
over.
another vacuum filler that we do. We have started to do, in conjunction with the Hebron Fund, tours of kids to Hebron. They may not be religious kids. They may not even be right-wing oriented kids. It's open to students on this campus or that campus. Come and see Hebron for real, not just read about it, but see it, because it's a very complicated reality. And many people have seen the reality and say, gee, you know what? I don't know exactly how I believe on this, but I understand how complicated it really is. We're doing the same thing now on a pilot basis with tours of Yerushalayim, where, believe it or not, there are lots and lots of young people in Israel who have never visited Jerusalem.
I know.
Staggering.
Staggering.
But it's reality. You know, Matan's father made a very important point. He said, look, when we were growing up, you didn't have to teach this stuff because we had just gone through the Shoah.
They lived it.
We had lived it. Everyone knew it. But the mistake that was made was we knew it, but the next generation, we couldn't say the same for them.
And that's what you're helping
And that's,
Israelis to do.
that is the gap.
You're telling the story.
That's right.
Yes. You're both doing extraordinary work. Kol tuv v'hatzlacha in all you do. It is a pleasure having you here. I hope anytime you're
It's
around,
our great pleasure.
you know, you'll come back again. Yotzei min haklal.
Thank you very much.
You're out of this world. You represent some of the finest of the Jewish people in the state of Israel. It's an honor for me to meet you. You must promise you're back in New York, you come and sit at this table.
It'll be our
Okay?
honor.
And if I'm in Israel, I'm looking you up.
Excellent.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank
Continue
you for
your
time.
wonderful work. By the way, if people want to go to your website, what's the website?
IMTI.org.
IMTI.org. I hope everybody who's watching L'chaim right now on JBS goes and visits your website and learns more about what you do. And if there's any way we can help you, we'll do that too.
Thank you very
But Toda Rabba, thank you so much for being here.
Toda Rabba.
Terrific.
Shalom,
Thank
shalom.
you.
There you have it, the thoughts of Matan Peleg and Doug Altabef of the organization Im Tirtzu in Israel. And both of them are doing fabulous work in defense of, it's not simply Zionism on Israeli college campuses. They're helping the Jewish people in the state of Israel and helping Israelis on the Israeli social scene in general. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed meeting them and that you're now more familiar with the organization Im Tirtzu. As always, I invite you to be in touch with me with any thoughts or comments you may have to any of the ideas expressed by Matan or Doug. Please email me, write me, post on our Facebook page, or tweet me. I look forward to hearing from many of you. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'chaim, my friends, to life.
L'chaim is a presentation of Jewish education in media.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.